Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of our financial aid series, where we talk about different ways to make college more affordable and easier on your wallet. And we talk about things like financial aid, scholarships, loans, tax credits, and a lot more, all so that your kids can go to great colleges without financial stress. So, if paying for college is in your future, stay tuned right here for money saving tips that you're not going to get from Google, from high school counselors, and certainly not from colleges themselves. Hey, my name is Roman Polnar. I'm a financial aid expert and your host for these financial aid series. And today, let's talk about what you should do after accepting a college offer. So, if you have a high school senior who just made their college decision, first and foremost, congratulations. But this is going to be of most interest to you. But even if your kids are still younger and not yet heading off to college, this is going to be a great preview of what to expect. And you may actually pick up a few gems along the way. In fact, I'm pretty sure you will, that will help you better prepare so that you'll be in a better position when the time comes and your high school senior gets accepted and gets ready to head off to school. So, all right, today is May 4th, and just 4 days ago was the National College Decision Day, where most high school seniors around the entire country made their final college choice. So they sent off their acceptance letters, and you, as parents, sent your deposit checks to make sure that your kids are going to have a spot in the fall semester. And some of you may be wondering, so now what? Well, here are a few things you should do first. Number one, relax, celebrate, and take a breather and really enjoy these next few months because there's just so many great moments coming up for you to, prepare for and really savor and enjoy and remember them. There's the high school graduation, the summer trips, right? The family dinners, finally, without having to nag your kids about homework, transcripts, essays, or college applications and just college stuff that you've been inundated with for the last few months. So, none of that anymore, right? The next few months should just be easy living, should be like feel good for all of you. And for a lot of families, the next few months are really going to be the calm before the storm because, well, come August, you're going to have to start writing much bigger checks every single semester for the next 4 years. Well, for some of you, even longer. And, sure, some of families have enough money saved. Some get help from their grandparents. Some kids are on full scholarships. But the overwhelming majority of families are actually getting stretched financially for the next 4 years and beyond because they're going to have to pay more than they can. And I know that a lot of times parents come to me feeling like they're the only ones among all of their friends who are like freaking out inside about money. And they're really worried about how they're going to pay for their kids' college, where the money's going to come from. And I always tell them, don't worry, you're not alone. I mean, like, not that it's going to make you feel any better, but at least know that you're not the only one. I promise that all of your friends who seem to have their together, they're secretly freaking out too. Because, when it comes to paying for college, yes, everyone is in different boats, but we're all in the same storm. Paying for college is hard. The prices are just outrageous. And most families, if not virtually all, have not been able to save as much money as they needed. You're not alone. Everyone is in the same storm. So, yes, some saved more than others, but a lot of people still have a gap that they need to meet. So, if you don't have enough money just set aside to write a check and not miss it, there's something else that you need to do in these next few months before your kids actually start college and go off in the fall. You need to figure out how to bridge that gap. Where is the money going to come from? You got to line up that money now. Because if you don't, you're going to end up in debt. Because that's the easiest thing to do, by the way. The easiest thing to do is just to borrow money. And the government makes it really, really easy to do. In fact, there's a special loan program that the government has that virtually everybody qualifies for. It's really fast, it's really easy, and it also happens to be the worst possible thing that you can do for yourself. But, if you don't want to do any extra effort into finding better ways to bridge that gap, you can borrow using what's called the Parent Plus loan program. It's a loan program specifically for parents who want to bridge that financial gap between the full cost of college and whatever your kid's financial aid offer is. So let's just take an example. Let's say the college is going to cost $60,000 every year, and your child was given $5,000 in financial aid. So you've got a $55,000 gap. And you can figure out like how to pay for that out of your own pocket, or if you wanted to, you can go up to the government and you can borrow up to $55,000 under that Parent Plus loan program. That loan comes right from the Department of Education. And usually you can either get it from the school directly or you can go through the government website. It's literally the same website where you did the FAFSA. It's www.studentaid.gov if you're interested in learning more about it. But you can literally just borrow whatever amount is between the full cost of college for your kids, upcoming year of school and their financial aid offer. There's virtually no underwriting. It's so easy to get. And a lot of families go there right away. But you should never rush to get these loans. They should be your absolute last resort, not the first place you look. These are really hard to pay off loans. And they don't have the same kind of protections that student loans have that may be given to your student. And because they come directly from the government, they're actually really hard to get rid of and discharge if you ever have any financial hardships because it's coming from the government. Like they can actually withhold your benefits, like reducing your social security later on in retirement, or they can withhold your tax refunds. Like they're one way or the other, the government's going to get your money. So if you have to borrow, look for other ways first. In fact, I just spoke with a parent yesterday. She's in her late 60s and still has over $80,000 of these plus loans to pay off for her daughter's college, who graduated years ago. So do your future self a huge favor and just don't reach for that low hanging fruit. It can very well be poisonous to your financial future, like no pun intended. Instead, if you have to make up that financial gap before your student starts in the fall, figure out if you can get some debt free money first. Now, it may be some extra financial aid, it may be some scholarship money, it may be some tax credits, it may be a summer job for your kid. Maybe it's doing some thoughtful financial planning yourselves so you can free up some money, unlock some of the money that you might have hidden or buried in your own personal finances before going into debt. All right. So, but even if you have to borrow, figure out the best way to borrow. So, how do you decide now where you should look for money? Well, everything starts with knowing your family's financial aid profile. I talk a lot about this in some of the prior videos, so in some of the prior podcasts that we've done. So if you've been following me for a while, go back and find the episodes where I talked about financial aid profiles. And if you're new, then subscribe so that you can get updates because I'll keep talking about these things to help you make better college decisions and paying for college and finding money. So make college more affordable. But there are three different financial aid profiles. The first financial aid profile is what I call the high financial need aid family. These are families generally with lower income, lower assets, and your student should qualify for a lot of traditional need based financial aid. The second type of family is what I call some financial need aid family. You're likely in that middle income. You've got some money set aside. You probably own your home. Maybe you still rent, but you've got some money. And so now the government and colleges are going to expect you to contribute more for college because you did what you're supposed to. So shame on you. Now they're going to punish you for it. But you're going to qualify for some financial need, but likely not enough to bridge whatever gap you have in your finances. So you're still going to have a bit of a, extra money that you'll need to come up with. So you're the sum financial need aid family. And then the third financial aid category is there's no financial need aid available to you. In the eyes of the government and in the eyes of colleges, you've made it. Congratulations, you've struck it rich. You don't need, in their eyes, any financial aid. And unfortunately, our financial aid formula is so skewed that even if you fall into this third category, doesn't actually mean you're swimming in cash. For most families, it means you're actually the traditional middle class or middle income family, maybe slightly upper middle, but you're certainly not, driving a Rolls Royce around. But unfortunately, you're not going to qualify for any need based aid. And it's really important for you to know which of these financial aid profiles you belong to, because where you look for money will be different. And you got to know which one you are. So if you are a high financial need aid family, actually, I would say, regardless of which profile family you are, being accepted into college effectively now can make financial aid office available to you at any time, because like you can literally have them on speed dial and ask them as many questions as you wanted to, because before your student was admitted they probably didn't give you like full access to them. You had to, send emails or write a letter. Well, now that your student is officially enrolled, put them on speed dial, like call them all the time. And if you are the first profile family, right, what you should do right now is see if you can get any more financial aid for the fall. Some colleges might have already cut off every possible financial aid appeal that may be available to you. So maybe that's all that there is for the upcoming semester. But what you should do is now start thinking about what you can do better for the upcoming FAFSA application in the fall so you can get more money for next year. So it's possible maybe you made some mistakes on your last FAFSA. Maybe you submitted the FAFSA late last year. Both of those things would mean that you could have gotten more money, but you didn't. So if you correct those mistakes or submit the FAFSA early this coming fall, that you should unlock more money. So start talking to the financial aid office. But maybe your circumstances have changed since the last time you completed the FAFSA. All of these things you need to keep in mind, because you got to start getting ready to fill out the FAFSA come October of this year. But the most important thing that you need to be mindful of if you're the category 1 family is don't do anything to upset your eligibility for financial aid, which basically means don't do anything to increase your EFC or your expected family contribution. So if you're going to need more money, if the college didn't give your student all of the financial aid that you needed, even if you're a high need-based financial aid family, make sure you know what the thresholds are, for example, for your students' summer jobs, so that they don't earn more than that threshold. Because the government's going to let your student earn some money that's not going to affect their financial aid. But if they earn more than that amount, well, they're going to withhold next year's financial aid. So it doesn't help you. So make sure you know what those thresholds are. Maybe you can find additional tax credits if you're going to start paying for college. Look into the American Opportunity Tax Credit. Um, just Google it again, or subscribe and follow my podcast as well as these Facebook Lives. wherever you happen to be watching or listening to this, because we have other episodes on these tax credits. Now, if you're on the opposite end of the spectrum, you're an you don't qualify for any need-based financial aid. You didn't get any need-based financial aid, and you're not going to get any need-based financial aid. You're a higher income family. You've got some assets. Unfortunately, you're just not going to get financial aid. So don't worry about your EFC. So if you need extra money to pay for college, then look for private scholarships outside of the college. There are so many private scholarships available to incoming freshmen. And this summer, between the time your student graduates and starts college in the fall, is the time for them to start looking for scholarships. You should look into your own finances, do some thoughtful financial planning to see if there are additional money that you can unlock. If your student can get a summer job, don't worry about those financial aid cutoff thresholds that I just talked about for category one family. You're not a contender for need based financial aid, so don't worry about it. If your student can earn more money to help pay for college, do it. If you're maybe a business owner family and you can hire your student, or maybe you can shift some assets for tax planning purposes to get tax savings, do it. It's not going to hurt you, not going to hurt your financial aid. It's going to free up some of the money that you would have otherwise given to the government. Now, some of these things get a little bit more nuanced. So I'm going to give you the standard disclaimer is don't do any of these things until you've spoken to your qualified financial advisor or your accountant. If you have questions, you can always reach out to us. Just go to www.pillar6college.com and you can always request a private call, and one-on-one I'll help you. I'll answer the questions and give you some guidance, but talk to somebody who's a professional. Don't just implement these things just because I say so, because I don't know your personal situation. All right, like a little bit of a disclaimer, these are kind of best practices for you to think about. This is not me giving you specific advice, but there's plenty of time for you to now look for this extra money to bridge the gap. And so finally, what if you're the category 2 family? What if you qualified for some financial need, but you're not that high financial need family, nor are you no financial need family? If you're literally stuck in the middle. Well, as it often happens, those who are stuck in the middle usually have kind of the hardest time figuring out what they can do or should do, because it's not clear. Like, it's not a clear cut, do this or do that. Because when you're in the middle, you kind of have to figure out sort of how close you are to either of these two other extremes, because that's going to help you figure out what you should be doing. And unfortunately, in most cases, it means you've got to do a little bit of everything, which in a way is a tough spot to be in. In another way, you have a lot of more opportunities, because it's not going to be any one thing that's just going to drop all this money into your lap, but you've got a lot of different levers that you can pull on to collect a little bit of money from all these different parts of the financial aid system that together will add up to a meaningful amount of money that you can use to bridge that gap in paying for college before you go into debt. So, what does that mean? If you're if you have some financial aid eligibility, again, you've got the financial aid office now at your disposal. So make a friend. This is, these are human beings on the other end of the line. Like, these are people who want to help, but they're constrained by their school's financial aid policies. So now you've got the time to figure out what those financial aid policies are. What are the guardrails for the school that your student is going to be attending for the next 4 or more years? So start talking to them and figure out, what can you do differently? What can you do better come next financial aid season? And what can you do in the interim? If you apply for extra, or if your student applies and gets extra scholarships outside of the college, will those scholarships then offset the financial aid that you've already been given? This is not going to be on the college's website, I promise you. But now that you've got the financial aid office's phone number, you call them and you ask, because some colleges will practice something called scholarship displacement. Well, others don't. Scholarship displacement basically means that, let's say college gave your student $10,000 of financial aid or merit scholarships, doesn't matter. But if your student gets $5,000 from an outside scholarship, those colleges that don't practice scholarship displacement will say, great, you get to keep the 10 we gave you, plus you've got five extra thousand bucks. So now you have extra $15,000 of financial aid. Well, other colleges that do practice scholarship displacement will say, well, congratulations that you got those other $5,000. But now that we know, we're going to reduce our initial financial aid offer by the 5,000 you're getting so that together you're not able to get more than 10. So not a great situation to be in. And you can find out from the college's financial aid office which of the outside scholarship policies they have so you can decide whether it makes sense to invest time and effort to look for outside scholarships. So the on one hand, right, you kind of don't have the leverage that you had before your student was made their final commitment, because you can't do a financial aid appeal as effectively now that you're in. But on the other hand, you've got the benefit of now being an enrolled student or having an enrolled student and being able to form a relationship and have a dedicated contact in the financial aid office for you to ask a lot of questions that will help you navigate these extra, n- sort of minefields, if you will, in making sure that you don't do anything to hurt yourselves and actually get free money. But, look into the same tax credits that I mentioned earlier. Make sure that if you're eligible for the American Opportunity Tax Credit, that you take advantage of it come the fall. If you're going to be taking money out of 529 plans, especially if it's coming from the grandparents, make sure you're doing it in the right way so it doesn't offset or hurt your financial aid next year. There are lots of opportunities. Same thing with, college jobs. Make sure that whatever threshold that the college has isn't going to be exceeded so you don't hurt any financial aid that you've already sort of been given, that it's not going to get taken away from you. So there are options. And like I said earlier, if you want to learn more, just go to our website. There's a ton of free content. It's pillar6college.com. There are also links for you to schedule a one on one conversation if you want some personal help. And we also have some easy to consume educational resources that are very, very specific to where you are at different stages of the college planning journey. So feel free to go there and sign up for our newsletter. I send out an almost daily financial aid tip that you can all use, and so um, use it as a resource. Now, if you've got any questions, reach out, and if you're listening to this live, feel free to put your questions in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them as we go along. I don't really have anything else to tell you other than, you know enjoy these next few months. It's really cool. You've done a lot of work. I'm sure your kids have done a lot of work to get into college, which is a gargantuan task to begin with. And it's a huge, moment to celebrate and just enjoy these next few months. But like I said earlier, if you're going to need extra money to actually pay that bill once it's due in August, take some time to learn your options. Don't just rush to take those loans because, yeah, they're easy to get. Yeah, they don't take much time. And quite honestly, virtually everybody qualifies. I'll just mention this one brief thing because I get a lot of questions about these Parent Plus loans every single spring as more and more families realize they need money to pay for college. So they're easy to get and they're virtually no qualification. It's not like getting a traditional loan where you have to go to a bank and supply your, income and your savings to make sure that the bank approves you. It's a knockout type of approval. Like the government will literally ask you a few questions. They'll do a very soft credit check just to make sure that you're not in current like bankruptcy or you didn't have a bankruptcy recently. They'll ask, make sure you're not in jail. But as long as you don't have a bankruptcy on your record or you're not in prison, virtually everybody gets an automatic approval for any amount. Again, up to the cost of the college. So it's easy to get and it can seem like the best place to go, but it's not because those loans are quite bad. All right, Wendy, I see that you have a question. All right, so you were saying if my student has a part time job, it could affect financially in the future. How do I know how much he could make without it affecting financial aid? Great question. Well, first of all, there's always Google. And depending on if your school uses the FAFSA or the CSS profile, the income thresholds are different. And I don't remember exactly to the dollar what it is for this or for next school year. I think it's around $6,000. So most colleges, according to the government formula, will let your student earn a certain amount, and I think it's upwards about 6,000 before they use any of that income to offset financial aid. But if they earn above that amount, then 50% of all of that extra income will offset their financial aid dollar for dollar. So if they earn $10,000 extra, then $5,000 will be reduced, or $5,000 of future financial aid will be taken away. And I believe for CSS profile schools, the threshold is much lower. I think they consider everything that the student earns to be or as a reduction against financial aid. So it really depends where your student is in college, and call the financial aid office. That's what I said. If your student is already in, use them to tell you these figures exactly, and make sure that you know exactly for that specific college. Like you're no longer having to wonder like what are these best practices are, because now you have a specific college that has their own rules, their own policies, and now you've got direct number to call. It's a really cool thing. Wendy, you're welcome. I'm glad this was helpful. Yeah, I can't tell you, like, this happens a lot where, families will call us in their kids' sophomore or junior year in college, and they'll say, "I don't get it. We have been getting financial aid now, in the past year, in the past 2 years, sometimes in the past 3. Our finances haven't really changed. Everything is the same. We're filling out the FAFSA." It's like, we're pros at this now. Like, whatever mistakes we might have made in the first FAFSA, we're not making those mistakes, but like, it's like a head scratcher. But why didn't we get any financial aid this year? We got it every prior year. Happens all the time. And so when we go through like, what are the changes that have taken place, almost always it's something to do with the student. And I'll mention one more thing. But the college student actually getting a job, as they get older, maybe they're interning somewhere, maybe they're actually getting like a real job where they might work after they graduate, and the amount that they start to earn is much higher than they were delivering pizza in high school. And that usually is one of the biggest things that upsets their financial aid. So just be mindful of that. If you're expecting financial aid, don't violate those thresholds. And if you are going to violate the threshold and lose financial aid, make sure it's going to be worth it. The other thing that I've seen, and I'll just mention it briefly, is when parents do a rollover. Let's say they change jobs and they do a 401k rollover from the old company into the new company. Or maybe they're retiring and they roll money over from their prior 401k into their own personal retirement account or their IRA. Sometimes it happens that that rollover, which is a kind of behind the scenes event, it doesn't trigger taxes, it doesn't trigger penalties. Like you actually never took money physically outside of your retirement plan. It just went from one retirement plan to another retirement plan, right? So, for all intents and purposes, nothing really changed in your financial life. But on your tax return, you have to actually report that there was a transaction or a transfer that took place. Sometimes the FAFSA picks up that transaction as an actual withdrawal. And we've seen this happen where, let's say, a family or a person moves money over and it's, let's say, $200,000 that they saved in their 401k. They move that money into their IRA. The FAFSA sometimes picks up that $200,000 transfer as an actual withdrawal, and it's seen as extra $200,000 of income on the FAFSA, even though you didn't actually take the money out. It's crazy. And then all of a sudden, their expected family contribution shoots straight up through the roof. And they go from a category 1 or 2 family where they would have qualified for financial aid to a category 3 family that qualifies for zero financial aid. And it's a really frustrating thing because you didn't actually get the money. Like nothing's changed. It's still locked up in a retirement plan. But the colleges will just go ahead and wipe any financial aid off the plate and they'll say, you got to pay full price. So don't worry. I don't mean to scare you to say, like, if that happens, you're stuck, so you can't retire, you can't change jobs, and you can't do rollovers. You can. You'll just have to be mindful that this might happen and talk to the colleges directly. Bring a copy of your tax return and say, I didn't take this money. This was just the transfer. This was just a rollover. Give me my financial aid again. So, again, and finally, congratulations. Your student's in. Wipe the sweat off your brow. You have less things to now worry about in one way, but you have more certainty now because now you know exactly what the financial aid policies are at the school that your student's going to be attending for the next 4 years. And if you don't know, use the time to find out and do everything that you can to get and to continue getting as much money from that college as possible, whether it's in need based financial aid or merit based financial aid. Don't do anything to upset these two things. And then if you still have a gap, talk to the financial aid office to figure out how you can get extra money to bridge that gap without taking on debt. And if you have to take on some debt, do your research and take the best kind of loans. Don't just assume that the lowest hanging fruit and the easiest ones to get are the best. In most cases, quite the opposite. They're the most dangerous. So, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening wherever you happen to be right now. I wish you all very best. Good luck in the next 4 years. Continue following our channel wherever you happen to subscribe. I'll keep bringing more financial aid tips for all of you, whether you're still preparing to send your kids to college or getting your kids through school and paying as little for it as possible. So be well. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.